appreciate how smart our ancestors are, because they don't always travel in very large spacecraft. But what they have learned to do is travel light and make sure that whatever it is that they need, they have or they can grow. Now, virtually every mothership has an internal ecosphere. Every one. Now, we see the scout craft, we see the 4, the 5, the 100-mile craft. The 100-mile may have some kind of an ecosphere inside of it because it has a crew. That crew needs to eat. Okay? So they will create a park-like setting, an ecosphere, inside those spacecrafts. Most of the craft that have hit the Earth are just little scout ships. If a 100-mile mothership hit the Earth, we'd have a pole shift, and everybody would know about it. But the very large ships, and I'll give you the example of the Andromedan motherships, they're complete spheres, and on the inside, they are complete worlds unto themselves. In the center of these crafts, and they may have as many as 3, they will have ecosystems, parks, as big as 21 miles long. The one that I saw was 21 miles from one end to the other. For me, and it was 900 miles, and for me to literally see every inch of that ship would take 25 years. That's how big it was. Had everything. Everything. In these parks, you could not even tell that you were in a spacecraft. You would think you were in a park, you know. Agora Hills, California, Rocky Mountain National Park, and they're complete unto themselves. Everything is grown aboard the craft. So, when they come here, and they send a team down to the surface of a planet, and they say, okay, we're setting up we're setting up an Eden because we're going to leave you, a team of you here, to research the life, the plant life, the geology of the planet, the minerals, what it has. What they do is they literally drop, can be as many as 12 type of cylindrical antennas. They plant these antennas down into the ground, at least a mile into the ground, and when they flip these things on, they connect. And when they connect, when they turn on and they connect to each other, they create a dome. A dome. It's a frequency dome. And then all they do is they unload the plants, they unload the fruit trees, everything they need, and this biosphere is exactly to match their physiology. Doesn't have too much oxygen, doesn't have too much carbon. It's exactly what they need. It can even be hydrogen. Can even be hydrogen, because what it means is then once they leave, they just wear a spacesuit and they can go out and do their work. But when they come back from doing their work, they enter their biosphere, and it's like living on the home planet. This is what an Eden is. It's good stuff. God, it gives me the chills. The very first one was founded in North America, what is now North America, along what is now known as the New Mexico-Arizona border. And it was founded by and established by the CCAR, which are a hydrogen-based life form. So they had to have something like this. Now, hydrogen is a gas. It's not something we can use. We can't, our physiology simply will not allow us to breathe and live in an environment like that. But hydrogen, the beings tend to be very large. They tend to be a little bit slower in movement. Their body frequency, the rhythms of their biosystem are much, much slower than O2. And the one thing about hydrogen-based life forms is that they cannot go faster than the speed of light in space travel. They can't. Where O2 have been known to go 4 times the speed of light. And that's been a real problem for the hydrogen-based beings. In lectures years ago, I talked about how prejudice is an extraterrestrial perspective. That's what I've been taught by Moronae and Vissaeus. So all the prejudices we have, we've learned. We've formed some of our own, but the initial not liking any of your own race was taught to us by these guys millions and millions of years ago. Now, this first Eden was created 899,701 Earth years ago. And this was by the sea car in New Mexico, Arizona border. They still fancy the desert. They still fancy the desert, the reptilians. This biosphere was first inhabited by caste. Now, the reptilian civilization is three castes, is a caste system. Okay, it's a monarchy, but it's also a caste system. And you will find that it is stunningly similar to those in England and Europe, where you have royalty. You have the officer class, which is your dukes, your earls, and then you have your peasants who do all the dirty work, literally do all the work. It's exactly like that. According to Moronae, this first biosphere was built by the officer caste or officer class of reptilian beings, and they were the first to stay here. It was not actual royalty. Several thousand years later, Orion, well, actually a couple hundred years later, Orion established an Eden here from the Orion star system. In Orion, they come from Rigel and Betelgeuse. Rigel, the star we call Rigel, the Orions, their name for this planet, for this star system, is Cyclopesis. In their tongue, it is called Cyclopesis. And whenever they go to a formal function of a galactic event where there are other star races there, the proper way that they introduce themselves, and this is what the Andromedans do, and apparently it's tradition, and it was done, and everyone, whether they're enemies or not, have agreed to these specific introduction traditions so that there's no misunderstandings. So they've created traditions, and everybody does it, no matter what. This is what they do. You introduce yourself, you give them your full name, any rank or office, and the star system that you're from. So, Alex Collier, father, because I don't have a rank or an office, Sol system, Terra 3. That's how I would properly introduce myself, so that whoever it is that I'm introducing myself to knows who I am and where I'm from. Now, if you're an extraterrestrial, you're all talking, most of them are telepathic. So therefore, they're giving the same information, but as they're giving the information, they're also flashing star maps because that's what's in their head, you know, and the other races immediately acknowledge that because they get all that. Orion established their first Eden in what is now called Uramani, China. The date, 763,132 years ago. Shortly thereafter, Capella, also part of Ursa Major, Ursa Minor. The Capellans established their first full operational Eden 741,237 years ago. And theirs was established at the base of Mount Yogan in southern Chile. Next are the Vegans. Now this is not a plant-eating race. I just want to explain that. Okay, they're from Vega. They're also known to us as the Lyrans, who are literally our human ancestors. They established their first colony 701,655 100,000 years ago in North Africa, along what is now known today as the Libyan and Niger border. On an archaeological perspective, from what I've been told, there in Ethiopia, there are absolute amazing things yet to be dug up there that have been left behind, that, you know, the cavemen did not build. Next, we have the Cassiopeans. Cassiopeans, 604,003 years ago. This is an entirely insexual sentient race. That's Algeria, North Africa. And the next is Butes, Nibiru. We know them today. They established their first Eden 585,133 years ago in Cairo. What a shock, what a surprise. Cairo, Egypt. And then Orion sent another team here, 87,300 years ago. And this one was established in Perth, Australia. The Earth was not in the position that it's laying in now. If you were to take the planet as it is today and lay it literally on its side, this is where they were colonizing. But these are the locations we know today. Some of the colonies, after they'd been here for some time, they packed up and they left. They got all the information they wanted. Okay, but the Earth is in constant flux. You got to remember, these are many of these are hydrogen-based extraterrestrial, hydrogen-breathing extraterrestrial races. So when they go to their home planet, it's dull compared to the very complex ecosystems that O2, that oxygen breathers have and live with. Okay, so they're extremely fascinated, and according to Moronae, what they were trying to do was to not only study the vegetation and life forms here in oxygen-breathing ecosystems, but they were also trying to genetically manipulate them so that they could take them home and make them hydrogen. That's what a lot of this was about. This is where, you know, they became geneticists, master geneticists, is trying to convert O2 life forms to hydrogen life forms. We're blessed. Oxygen breathers are blessed with very complex ecosystems, very magnificent ecosystems. Lyrans, again, came back 83,400 years ago. Has anybody ever been to Basque country? To the Basque? Right. Their language, nobody knows their language, where it came from. It's an ancient Lyran tongue that has survived. It's extraterrestrial. In fact, all of them are. But that one is really, really still close to the original tongue. Orion came back again, 73,414 years to Mount Neblina on the border of Venezuela and Brazil. Now, 71,933 BC, Lemuria is founded as a collective colony.